Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Hwaye, and in this edition, we are going to look at the two Koreas. In the south, a vibrant democracy and a high-tech hub. In the north, a totalitarian state ruled by one family. Our special guests are from both sides who got together to write a powerful book. North and South Korea are technically still at war nearly 70 years after their conflict ended in an armistice. The paths they have taken since then couldn't have been more different. While South Korea became a global technological powerhouse, North Korea has become one of the most isolated countries in the world. James Vasina takes a look.
Previously under Japanese control, the once unified Korean peninsula was split in two in the aftermath of the Second World War. The Soviet Union set up a communist government in the north, while the United States backed a pro-Western rule in the south. But with neither side content with the division, on the 25th of June 1950, North Korean troops crossed over the 38th parallel that divides the two countries. This marked the first military action within the ongoing Cold War, with millions of lives believed to have been lost in the three-year conflict. The peace treaty signed in 1953 established what's still known today as the Demilitarized Zone, or the DMZ, that runs across that 38th parallel. North Korea's first leader, Kim Il-sung, promoted a mix of Marxist and nationalistic ideologies throughout his 48 years in power. After his death in 1994, his son Kim Jong-il took over. He pushed the personality cult to new extremes as the country plunged into a period of mass starvation. With communication banned between people living in the two Koreas, several hundreds of thousands of North Koreans have defected to neighbouring countries since the end of the war. Millions of families were separated by the conflict. Over the years, the two countries have allowed selected relatives to temporarily reunite. Today, the Kim dynasty continues, with Kim Jong-un taking the lead in 2011. While there have been attempts to create ties with foreign powers, notably with then US President Donald Trump in 2018.
We had a historic meeting and decided to leave the past behind.
These efforts have ultimately led to little success.
So how do people in both countries view each other? Now, joining me on the set is Seh-lynn, who's South Korean. Seh-lynn, thank you for being with us.
Very happy to be here.
Now, you recently wrote a book together with Jihyun, who's joining us from Manchester in the UK. The book, The Hard Road Out, is a story about how Jihyun escaped North Korea to build a new life, written by Seh-lynn with her own perspective too. Now, Seh-lynn, could you first of all tell us how this joint project came about?
Yes, absolutely. It was not planned this way. It happened by accident. We met for the first time in 2014, and I was hired by Amnesty International to conduct an interview for her in a view for a documentary that they want to film about her life. So I found myself all day long asking her questions, listening to her answers, and getting shocked by the horrors of North Korea, by the sufferings they went through. But at the same time, I had empathy for these women who were sitting in front of me. And in the background of my mind, I had the anti-communism education that I have received when I was a child. So all these mixed emotions are going through, and I was in a very confused state of mind, is the least I can say. So this confusion is, I think, very revealing of what South Koreans in general might feel towards North Koreans.
So, now, Jihyun, you grew up in Cheonjin, a city on the northeastern coast of North Korea. What was it like living there?
I didn't know what happened in outside the countries because North Korea government never share to us outside the country informations. So government always told to us, America and South Korea is our enemies. So we have to fight to them and the unification bonds. So my child life was always hatred. It's American and South Korean people, but I never met to them. So that is my personal and child emotions when I lived in North Korea.
And what made you want to leave North Korea?
So, the North Korea government always told to us, North Korea is nothing to envy, and the socialism country is a really great country in our world. But in early 1990s, many socialism countries collapsed down in East Europe, and also Soviet Union is collapsed down early 1990s. And then North Korea had financial problems, and there's former Soviet Unions didn't support to North Korea. So North Korea government stopped our food, and then people died of starvations. So my uncle also died of starvations in front of me, and then my father also illness, and my father's last wish was to save my younger brother. So I left North Korea, abandoned my illness father alone in cold dining room, and then me and my younger brother immediately left North Korea. So I still don't know that when my father passed away and where he was buried. So that is my first time experience.
The famine claimed the lives of your own family members. Now, your story, your journey has been extraordinary and heart-wrenching, as you've been telling us now. You escaped North Korea twice before reaching freedom where you are now. Tell us more about your own journey after leaving North Korea.
Yeah, it's the first time I left North Korea and once in China, and I was human trafficking and sold to Chinese men and separated my younger brother. So my younger brother also sent back to North Korea, and I still don't know what's happened to him, his life or death. I still don't know. So 6 years I was another slavery life in China, and after I had a child, but he was nameless, is a statelessness child because I was born in North Korea. And 6 years after, I also repatriated to North Korea because Chinese Communist Party never accept North Korean refugees in China. And then I stayed in North Korea is a labor camp. So I almost deaf inside, but I never gave up my hope. That's a hope that one day I want to reunite my son. And then I met my son in 2005. And after 2008, we arrived in the UK.
Seh-lynn, do you think there were any risks for you about helping a North Korean defector get her story out?
Well, it was very hard emotionally for me. It was hard not to fall apart, really, because of the intensity of the stories and the sufferings that I had to basically digest myself before I could write about it. And my family was very worried I would not be able to overcome all these difficulties. But in terms of risk, when you are faced in front of a situation that was not planned, and I think you tend to act instinctively. And you might call it courage. I don't know what it might be, but you don't really process information in a rational way. You just act instinctively. So, for example, if you see a child falling in front of you, instinctively go and help that child. The same way, I knew my education was such that I was not supposed to talk to a North Korean. As you know, we have a national security law that prevents us from engaging with each other. But at the same time, there was a woman my age, looking like me, speaking the same language. Humanly, I was very, very curious. So my head and my heart were saying some completely different things. But at the end of the day, I think you go the extra step when you know that something is there's something there that needs to be done, and you find the courage to go that extra mile when you have that calling behind. Having said that, I did everything that I was supposed to do, i.e., the next day after the interview, I went to report myself to the South Korean embassy and declared my meeting with the North Korean. That's how I grew up, you know. If you meet accidentally a North Korean, you go to the local authorities and report the event. And that's because Korea is still at war, whether we like it or not.
The North-South diplomatic relationship is again at a low point recently. Do you think that can improve, and do you think that the reunification of the two sides will one day become a reality?
You know, if we, Jihyun and I both, didn't believe in reunification, I don't think we would have been able to write a book together, because we need a common goal. If we didn't have that, we would not have been able to spend this much time together. You know, if you ask me, do I believe in reunification? Yes, but how is it going to happen and when is it going to happen? My honest answer is I don't know. However, I don't think it's a good reason enough to just put your hands down and your guards down and do nothing about it. Quite the opposite. On an individual level, things that I've done with Jihyun are so important, because I almost feel like we are doing things that the governments can't do themselves, because they are so big and so hard to move, and so many consensuses to achieve, to make decisions. But if people like me and Jihyun do something at the micro level and achieve what we can call a micro reunification, well, then this story can get told to others, and hence the point of this book. And people can understand that North Korea, South Korea is not just about government, it's about ordinary people as well. So, for example, from the time where I believed North Koreans had red horns on their head and they were evils and they were the mortal enemies, to where I am today, where the perception has completely changed. But I had to spend a lot of time to build trust, to ask questions, and to figure out what is our common ground. You know, the common heritage, the fact that we are women, the fact we are sharing a language, and the fact that because we both lived in the UK, the fact that we're missing home, both. So all these factors that are soft factors, but that are that allowed us to break the walls little by little. And it took us 3 years to write the book and to feel close to one another. So it is not going to happen over time, but I am still very hopeful.
Well, Seh-lynn, thank you so much. And Jihyun, thank you so much for joining us from Manchester as well. And that's it for this edition of Access Asia. Do stay tuned on France 24. There's more news coming up.